Okay, so today we're diving into some fascinating stuff. We're talking Lev Vygotsky, that influential psychologist.
Oh, yeah. His works had a massive impact on how we think about learning, especially in education.
Huge, right? And you send over this research article. It really digs into how Vygotsky's ideas have been interpreted and
Mhm.
sometimes, misinterpreted over time.
Yeah, it can get pretty tricky. Like, we think we know what he meant. But when you look back at his actual
It's like a
writings,
whole new layer, right? So today, our mission is to kind of cut through all that noise, get back to what Vygotsky was actually saying, and figure out why it still matters so much.
totally, it's relevant for like everyone, students, teachers, even if you're just curious about how the mind works.
For sure. Our listeners are definitely interested in learning and growth. So this
Mhm.
deep dive, it's going to be full of aha moments.
I think so. It's like getting the insider scoop on some really influential ideas.
Exactly. All right. So this article, right off the bat, it points out how our first introduction to Vygotsky, particularly through that 1978 book, Mind and Society, it was kind of like an abridged version of his complete theory.
Yeah. You see, Mind in Society was super important. I mean, it brought Vygotsky to the English-speaking world, but even the editors admitted to, well, kind of taking liberties with the original texts.
So what we were reading wasn't a completely accurate reflection of his whole body of work.
Yeah, you could say that. Some of those early interpretations missed the mark, even if unintentionally.
It's interesting, though, because the zone of proximal development, the ZPD.
Oh, the ZPD, right. It's become like a cornerstone of education. Everyone talks about it.
Exactly. But this article, it suggests that maybe its early fame kind of overshadowed other important parts of Vygotsky's thinking.
I see what you mean. It's like focusing on one brushstroke and missing the entire painting.
A great analogy. And the article, it points out that Vygotsky actually dedicated relatively little space to the ZPD in his writings.
Fewer than 15 pages, actually, across 6 volumes.
Wow, that's wild. Yet, in Mind and Society, it became this big, prominent concept. It really shaped how people understood him early on.
Absolutely. And that's where things get even more interesting because the article also digs into how some of those early descriptions of the ZPD weren't exactly right on the money.
Like the idea that it's mainly determined through collaboration with more capable peers.
Yeah, that one really took hold. I mean, it influenced so many educational practices.
But the article is clear that framing peer collaboration as the primary way to define the ZPD, not really what Vygotsky intended.
Right. I mean, peer interaction is valuable, sure, but to say it's the main factor, it's not fully supported by Vygotsky's complete work.
So a slightly off interpretation kind of became the popular understanding.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's a bit like a game of telephone, right? The message gets distorted as it gets passed along.
Totally. And on top of that, the article reminds us that Vygotsky had very specific definitions for things like intellectual imitation.
And the role of scientific or subject matter concepts, that one's so crucial, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle early on.
Right. He wasn't just using everyday language. He was building a very precise framework. Okay, so we've seen how the early picture of Vygotsky, especially around the ZPD, was a bit blurry. Let's focus in on that misconception of the ZPD itself.
Okay, so we've got this initial, maybe oversimplified idea of peer collaboration, right?
Right.
And it sort of became the launching pad for a bunch of other interpretations. The ZPD was described as a structure of joint activity, with partners having different expertise levels. There was even this focus on transfer of ability, like skills magically passing from the more capable peer to the less capable one.
It sounds like the ZPD became this catch-all term for any learning involving interaction. Some people even limited it to tiny moment-to-moment changes within a task.
Exactly, like just those immediate improvements. But the article is very clear. Vygotsky himself emphasized the role of the teacher or a more knowledgeable adult in guiding development within the ZPD.
So it's not just throwing kids together and seeing what happens. The teacher plays a crucial role in assessing and supporting.
Absolutely. Vygotsky imagined teachers using techniques like demonstrating solutions or giving partial solutions or explaining underlying principles. It's about figuring out what a child is ready to learn with the right guidance.
So the ZPD isn't about what a kid can already do on their own. It's about identifying those emerging abilities, those maturing higher cognitive functions, as the article puts it.
Right, and this is where his concept of intellectual imitation becomes so important.
Yeah, can you unpack that a bit? Intellectual imitation, it's not just about copying, right?
Not at all. It's about a child understanding enough to participate in an intellectual task, but with guidance. They're not quite ready to do it solo, but they can follow along and contribute with support.
So it's a sign of what they're capable of learning next, what falls within their ZPD, so to speak.
Precisely. And here's another point the article makes that's really important. Vygotsky explicitly said that groups of children left to their own devices cannot facilitate their own significant cognitive development.
Whoa, that's a big one. It challenges a lot of common practices, doesn't it?
For sure, he was very clear. Adult-child cooperation is key for this kind of development.
So while kids interacting is good for social stuff, it's not enough for those big intellectual leaps.
Right. They need that interaction with a more knowledgeable person to guide them, to provide that ideal form of behavior.
And that leads us to the importance of teacher-student interaction. This back and forth where the teacher explains, asks questions, corrects, prompts the student to explain their thinking. The article stresses that this is fundamental for cognitive growth within the ZPD.
Yeah, it's a dynamic partnership. The teacher isn't just giving a lecture, they're actively guiding the student towards independent mastery.
It's about scaffolding their understanding. Okay, so we've got a much clearer picture of the ZPD now, but the article also makes a point about when the ZPD concept is most relevant. It suggests that it's mainly for school-aged children and adolescents. Why is that?
Well, Vygotsky believed that younger preschool children, like toddlers, primarily experience the world through their senses, through perception. They haven't yet developed those foundational cognitive tools, like conscious awareness and intentional control over memory and attention. Those tools are needed for those higher mental functions to take hold.
So for those little ones, applying the ZPD the same way might not be accurate.
Exactly. The kind of support they need is going to look different from what a middle schooler needs.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've tackled the ZPD. Now, let's shift to something the article really emphasizes, the role of subject matter concepts. This seems absolutely central to Vygotsky's whole theory.
It is. He saw mastering those concepts, like understanding the water cycle or democracy, as the foundation upon which higher mental functions are built.
So it's not just about knowing facts, it's about developing the tools for thinking itself.
Exactly. And his definition of a real concept is really interesting. It's not just a label for a group of things.
It's deeper than that, right?
Much deeper. He said a real concept is this rich image of a thing in all its complexity, with all its connections and relations to other concepts. It's not static, it's a process, an aggregate of acts of judgment, apperception, interpretation, and recognition.
So like, understanding a car isn't just knowing it has wheels, it's knowing how the engine, steering, brakes, all those systems work together.
Perfect example. And think about the article's example of bacteria. It's not just knowing it's a single-celled organism. It's understanding its relationship to microorganisms, its potential to cause disease, how it's different from a virus, all those connections.
Right, it's about understanding the whole network of ideas.
And the mental processes involved in forming those true concepts, like abstracting, synthesizing, comparing, contrasting, those are the same processes we use for higher mental functions.
So learning what we learn and learning how to think are deeply intertwined.
Absolutely. The article even uses the term dialectical unity to describe the relationship between subject matter concepts and new ways of thinking.
Dialectical unity, huh? Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. Vygotsky believed they developed together in this back-and-forth relationship. As we grapple with more complex concepts, that process changes how we're able to think. Our understanding of the world and our ability to think abstractly, they grow together.
So they fuel each other. And logical thinking, for Vygotsky, it wasn't a separate skill, it was tied to this deep understanding and application of concepts.
Right. It's like the article says, a concept in action. It's about using that knowledge, not just having it.
Okay, so this all points to how what we learn has a big impact on how we learn and think. The article then dives into different levels of thinking, looking at school-aged children and adolescents. This seems really important for putting these ideas into practice.
It is. Vygotsky observed that around age 6, when kids typically start school, their thinking often operates at the level of what he called pseudo-concepts.
Pseudo-concepts. What are those exactly?
So with a pseudo-concept, a child can identify examples of something, like different types of tables. But they're doing it based on surface-level similarities, not a grasp of the underlying concept that makes a table a table.
So they might recognize different birds, but not grasp what actually defines a bird, what sets it apart from other creatures.
Exactly. Then, as they move through elementary school, they develop preconcepts. These are limited understandings, kind of like special cases of the true concept.
The article uses that example of third graders describing landowners under serfdom based on things like big houses and electricity.
Yeah, instead of understanding the social and economic system itself.
They're missing that deeper level. And the article mentions that for children in this stage, there's this lack of conscious awareness of their own thinking processes.
Vygotsky called it underdevelopment of logical thinking, and he believed it often lasts until around age 12.
But then, adolescence. That's where things change, right? The article says to remember is to think for adolescents. That's pretty different from younger kids.
It's a huge shift. Memory becomes logically organized. When an adolescent recalls a concept, it reflects their own analysis and understanding. It's not just a jumble of facts anymore.
So forming these true concepts during adolescence is really key for intellectual development.
It unlocks that deeper understanding of the world, of our culture, of everything, really. It's the foundation for those higher levels of thinking we strive for in education.
Okay, so big implications here for how we approach education. The article talks about rethinking classroom practices, addressing concerns about content-heavy curricula, and even designing curricula from a Vygotskian perspective. Let's dig into that.
Yeah, let's get practical. So when we think about assessing a student's ZPD, it's not just about what they can do alone. It's about identifying those emerging abilities, their cognitive awareness, how well they understand connections between concepts, their grasp of those crucial mental functions.
It's about potential, not just current performance.
Exactly. And the article really emphasizes that teacher-student interaction is key. It's not enough to just have kids collaborating.
The teacher is actively guiding, scaffolding, not just delivering information.
Right. Vygotsky actually called direct transmission of concepts educationally fruitless. It leads to superficial understanding, words without real meaning.
That's a great point. And it brings us to that concern about content-heavy curricula, especially in early grades.
Yeah, that pressure to cover so much can actually backfire. If kids are just memorizing tons of facts, they might not develop that deeper understanding, that abstract thinking that Vygotsky emphasized.
Exactly. And the article points out that if we're bombarding school-age kids with tons of abstract concepts before they're ready, it can actually hinder that development.
They end up focusing on rote memorization instead of true comprehension.
So what does designing a Vygotsky-inspired curriculum look like?
It's not about the logical structure of the subject itself or a strict timeline. It's about aligning with how kids' thinking actually develops.
So it's about starting with those key concepts, introducing them at a simpler level, and gradually building towards deeper understanding.
Exactly. The article gives that example of teaching about trade. You start with a basic understanding, then build up to more complex ideas as their cognitive abilities mature.
It's about fostering that deeper understanding of how things are connected.
Precisely. Okay, so to recap, it's crucial to understand Vygotsky accurately, to move past those early, maybe incomplete interpretations.
We've seen how central subject matter concepts are, and we've explored those different stages of thinking, from pseudo-concepts to true conceptual thinking in adolescence.
And all of this has huge implications for how we teach, how we learn, and how we design curricula.
It's been an eye-opening deep dive. And it makes me think, with all this pressure in education to cover so much information, could we actually be hindering the development of those deeper thinking skills?
It's a crucial question to ask ourselves. What if we prioritized depth over breadth? What if we focused on really understanding those core concepts?
Food for thought, right?
Definitely. And remember, this is just scratching the surface of Vygotsky's work. There's so much more to explore.
Absolutely. Well, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for listening, and until next time.